Here we're going to talk about the generalized innate immune system response known as inflammation. And inflammation is this response to infection or simply irritation of our tissues. Now, it is characterized generally by an increase in heat, an increase in the redness of a tissue, pain, and swelling. So we'll examine those particular characteristics. In A, we have our undamaged, uninflamed tissue, right? And we have blood flow coming out of capillaries into a vessel called a venule, small vein here. We can see our red blood cells and our white blood cells flowing through that bloodstream, right? The white blood cells would be dominated by the neutrophils. On the outside of our blood vessel, we have our tissue cells, the functional cells of this particular tissue, surrounded by extracellular matrix proteins, right? We also have inactive tissue macrophages, right? We have monocytes that have left the bloodstream to essentially live within this tissue interstitium. Now, they are inactive in response to pathogens, but they are active in another way in a housekeeping function, this sort of low-level activity of removing dead and dying cells. We also have our lymph vessels here. They're going to be picking up extra interstitial fluid formed by filtration, movement of plasma minus its proteins into the interstitium. That extra fluid is picked up by the lymph vessels. It's run through that lymphatic system, along which we have lymph nodes containing other immune system cells, the B and T cells. And finally, it's going to make its way back to the bloodstream, right? And dump back into large systemic veins. And so effectively, we have plasma becoming interstitial fluid, becoming lymph, which is dumped back into the blood, the plasma. On the right, we have breached this epithelial barrier that was protecting us, right? On the right side here. We now have cut ourselves, or we've got a splinter or something, and those microbes that were living on the surface can now enter our bodies, right? And they're going to initiate an immune response. And one of the first respondents are these tissue macrophages, right? These are phagocytic cells that have receptors that bind to microbe-associated molecular patterns, right? The microbes have membrane components that are recognized by the tissue macrophage. That'll initiate phagocytosis. Also, damaged cells express particular molecular patterns that label them for phagocytosis and destruction. They will digest those pathogens and express them on the surface using MHC2 proteins. And that will enhance the activation of acquired immune system components, the T cells. Now, in addition, these macrophages and another cell type activated called mast cells will release a variety of chemicals that initiate this inflammatory response. And some of those are listed over here, right? We have prostaglandin E2, histamine, serotonin, right? And these are chemicals that, in general, will dilate these blood vessels. That's going to increase blood flow. There comes our redness and our heat. But that also causes the red blood cells to flow along the axis of the vessel here, and the white blood cells get pushed to the margins, right? This allows them to extravasate or leave the bloodstream more readily, right? It's called leukocyte margination. And those largely neutrophils, again, are drawn chemotactically out of the blood in response to this infection. And those neutrophils are now activated out here in the interstitium and are going to help with phagocytosis of these pathogens. Now, some of the other chemicals, like histamine, will actually disrupt the endothelium. Now, that's certainly helped with the extravasation, but it also increases the permeability to things like complement proteins or antibody proteins that are also going to become active in this interstitium, helping to label and destroy these invading pathogens. Finally, PGE2 is a pain mediator, right, giving us one of our last responses to this infection, right? We got PGE2 enhancing pain in this area. One other thing that happens is we get swelling, and the swelling comes from the plasma proteins passing through this now more permeable capillary or venule wall, and that upsets the balance of pressures across that blood vessel wall and enhances fluid movement into the interstitium, fluid and some of these protein components now. And so again, the complement and the antibody proteins are helping the infection, but we're also going to get more lymph flow, which means more exposure of our foreign pathogens to the cells in our lymph nodes, the B and T cells. So all of these work together to activate immune system components, both innate and acquired, helping to fight the infection.